Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. In this moment in history, let's go back to an event that many modern historians agree was the culmination of one of the most turbulent and chaotic decades in American history, the 1960s. Where the 1950s were characterized by conservatism and traditional morality in a prosperous post-war world, the 60s swung the opposite direction, in the direction of rebellion, tensions involving race and war, assassinations of numerous political leaders, and sexual perversion. In the summer of 1969, a music festival took place in rural upstate New York where over 500,000 attendees spent 3 days celebrating this wave of new postmodern sensuality and rebellion, the Woodstock Festival. Now, Woodstock was the culmination of a decade of turbulence in which 3 high-profile American politicians were assassinated. That, of course, was President John Kennedy in 1963, his little brother and presidential candidate Robert Kennedy in 1968, and prominent civil rights activist Martin Luther King Jr. that same year. Racial tension between whites and blacks was reaching fever pitch as the country was breaking out of the near century-long Jim Crow era, which, to be clear, was good and necessary. But what was absolutely not good and necessary was the growing sexual revolution in the country at the same time. This was coupled with delusional dreams of an anti-war propaganda utopia that was really propagated by musicians and celebrities, including the Beatles, which gave birth to the hippie movement. Now, a wave of perversion against traditional marriage, coupled with severe mistreatment of veterans returning home from Vietnam, were among the markers in the liberal contingent of what we know now as the baby boomer generation. And this contingent made up the majority of the crowd, which was over 500,000 people, who descended upon a farm in Bethel, New York in August in 1969 for 3 days of what they called an Aquarian experience of peace, love, and music. While pop culture looks back at Woodstock with fondness, the Christian worldview would hardly affirm really anything about this massive festival that was rooted in New Age spiritualism and where drug use and sexual licentiousness ran rampant. Torrential rain and hot weather, as well as the massive number of attendees compared to the 50,000 that was expected, would no doubt have made the experience nothing short of physically disgusting. Sources indicate that 3 people died at the festival, 2 of them from drug overdoses. There have also sprung up in the decades that followed numerous claims of babies born and many more conceived at Woodstock, though the validity of these claims is difficult to prove. Now, as a final footnote to summarize the character of the generation, the organizers at Woodstock, who were 3 young men who embodied the rebellious spirit of the age, spent a small fortune to make it happen and failed to repay their massive debts for over a decade. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History. Thanks for watching this video. For more content like this, make sure to check out some of the other videos we have on the channel.